All right, today we're going to dive into a real political puzzle. How is it possible that massive deportation numbers under one president barely made a ripple, while very similar policies under another sparked a nationwide firestorm? It's a story that tells us a lot, maybe more about us and our own perceptions than about the facts themselves. So let's just get right to the heart of it. For years, deportations were happening at a really high rate. But the huge coast-to-coast protests we've all seen, that's actually a pretty new thing. So what changed? As you're about to see, the numbers alone, well, they don't even begin to tell the whole story. And seriously, these numbers might actually shock you. Between 2009 and 2016, during the Obama administration, over 3 million people were deported from the U.S. That is a massive number, and one that honestly catches a lot of people completely by surprise. And look, this wasn't some big secret. In fact, those high numbers earned President Obama a pretty pointed nickname from immigrant rights activists at the time, Deporter in Chief. So the people most directly affected, they were very aware of what was going on. The real mystery is, why wasn't the rest of the country? This is what we're calling the deportation paradox. You've got the hard facts on one side, really high numbers under one administration, and on the other, you have the public perception, widespread, furious outrage under another. So let's start digging in and unpacking the clues that help explain this. Our very first clue lies in a huge shift in policy. See, it's not just about how many people were deported. It's about how they were targeted. The entire strategy changed, and you can think of it as moving from a surgical scalpel to a giant net. And this slide really lays it out. On the left, you've got the scalpel approach. This was all about priority enforcement, focusing on individuals with criminal records or who were just caught at the border. It was a quieter, more administrative process. But then, on the right, things shifted to the net. This was universal enforcement. And that led to collateral arrests, which basically means any agent who encountered anyone without legal status could detain them, no matter how long they've been in the country or what their background was. And right here, this was the absolute turning point, the zero-tolerance policy. This wasn't just some bureaucratic change. This directly led to the systematic separation of families. It was a game changer because it created this incredibly powerful, visual, and just gut-wrenching emotional trigger that brought whole new waves of people out into the streets to protest. So let's move on to our second clue, and you'll see how this all starts to connect. What was once a relatively quiet policy debate suddenly became a national shout. The sheer visibility of what was happening, well, it changed everything. So what turned the volume up to 11? Well, a few things. First, really aggressive political rhetoric. It just created this constant sense of crisis and urgency. Second, you had viral videos. For the first time, social media gave everyone a raw, real-time window into raids and the conditions inside facilities. And finally, digital tools meant that organizers could get massive protests together seemingly overnight. This chart really puts it all side by side. Just look at the difference. The primary focus went from targeting criminal records to this idea that no one is off the table. Public visibility went from low and administrative to super high, with viral videos everywhere. This completely changed what people were angry about, from the sheer volume of deportations to the emotional issue of family separation. And that, in turn, shifted activism from quiet lobbying to massive street protests and calls to abolish ICE. The entire nature of the controversy was transformed. Okay, but even with these huge changes in policy and visibility, there is a deeper, more fundamental reason for why the public reaction was so different. And it really comes down to human psychology, to something political scientists call the partisan lens. Partisan-motivated reasoning. It sounds complicated, but it's actually super simple. It just means that our political identity acts like a filter on the world. It's like we're all wearing different colored glasses. When someone from our political team does something, we tend to give them the benefit of the doubt. But when someone from the other team does the exact same thing, we're way more likely to see it as a huge problem. And now we've got the smoking gun. There is a perfect real-world case study that shows this partisan lens in action, clear as day, and it all revolves around one single, powerful photo that set the internet on fire. So picture this. It's 2018, and this image of kids sleeping behind a chain-link fence just explodes online. It was shared by celebrities, politicians, activists, everyone. It became the symbol of the Trump administration's policies, and it fueled this massive wave of outrage. The image was undeniably powerful. No one's debating that. But the real key to understanding this whole paradox, this whole story, comes down to one simple question. When was this photo actually taken?
The answer? 2014. Yeah, that photo was taken by the Associated Press during the Obama administration. The conditions were real, the cage was real, but the widespread national outrage was 4 years late. And what happened next is just a masterclass in this partisan lens at work. Step 1, you have the huge viral outrage against the Trump administration. Step 2, the correction comes out revealing the photo was from 2014. Then, step 3, you get the justification, where people immediately shifted to arguing why the context was totally different back then. And finally, step 4, accusations, with opponents using the whole thing as proof of media hypocrisy. The photo itself never changed, but what it meant was completely redefined by who was in the White House.
So what does this all tell us? After digging through the policy changes, the rise in visibility, and the psychology behind it all, we land on a really powerful conclusion about how our politics work today. And here's the bottom line. The way a policy is carried out, the rhetoric around it, how visible it is, the emotional story it tells, that often matters so much more to the public than the raw statistics. 3 million deportations can happen almost in silence, but a single, heart-wrenching photo can ignite a national movement. In politics today, perception really is everything.
And so that leaves us with one final question for you. Knowing that this partisan lens exists, that we all have it to some degree, how does that change the way you'll read the next headline, or watch the next news report, or react to the next viral image that pops up in your feed? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.